Hello, today we want to talk about using your project to keep yourself on track when using our Everyday Plaid plan pooling yarn. Right here I have a swatch we're working on. There's our little live stitch right here. That we're mid-project, and we're going to be looking at how to read your project to make sure that your tension is staying the same, that you're keeping yourself kind of either the same, you're not getting too tight, too loose, so that your plaid kind of pattern will appear and keep nice and straight as you go. So what you're looking for when you're working on these projects is you're actually watching to make sure that that color is shifting one stitch each row. So we're looking for this kind of turquoise color. We're actually looking right here. So we're going, and he shifts one stitch over, and one stitch over, and one stitch over. And so this is what we're looking for. We want to see him shift about a stitch over each time. And sometimes, it's okay if it's like a stitch and a half every once in a while if it jumps a little bit extra, but we want to keep him fairly consistent. We look at, this pink again, and we go, and it's one over, and one over, and one over as we go, kind of along a grid. Again, we pick another spot. It's a little easier to see where the colors aren't crisscrossing, here with the green, and moving over, and moving over, and moving over. And that's what we want to see, is that one stitch shift, as we're moving along this grid. So as we're working this next row, we want to look at not the stitch here diagonally, but we want to look at the stitch just below. So we're looking at, this first purple, kind of pink stitch. Where's the first pink stitch here? And we can kind of see that this one is kind of where it's transitioning from purple to pink. And this stitch is kind of transitioning from purple to pink. So that's really okay. And we're looking at the end of it. So this last pink stitch, and there's the last pink stitch. This is definitely good, but that's what we want to see. We've kind of got this kind of half pink, half green, half pink, half green. There's the first turquoise stitch, the first turquoise stitch. So this swatch is definitely doing well, and the gauge is right on track. What you don't want to see is if, for example, here's your first turquoise stitch, and if when we look at this row below, your first turquoise stitch is 2 or 3 stitches back. So if you're finding that it's lining up and your new turquoise stitch is way ahead, is you're skipping ahead of yourself, that means that your tension has gotten much, much tighter, that you've kind of clenched up. Usually that means, oh, I'm really worried, or oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right, or I'm watching something really exciting on television, and when you start tensing up, it means that your stitches are getting tighter and you're using less yarn in each stitch, which means that the yarn kind of stretches out and goes further, but that shifts the pattern. So instead of shifting one stitch, it might shift 2 or 3. So when that happens, you kind of want to look and find, okay, where's the last spot? Do a little detective work, find the last spot that it shifted correctly, rip back a little bit. So that's why it's good to kind of periodically check at least once a row to make sure you're on track. Rip back to the last spot, you can find that it's definitely on target. Kind of shake out, like, okay, this is all good, and keep going, trying to keep yourself relaxed at your normal tension. Same thing, if this was our first turquoise stitch and we look down, and instead of that first turquoise stitch on the previous row reading right here, if we started our turquoise, but our first turquoise stitch was like over here where the purple is, that means that we've relaxed way too much. We've gotten super relaxed with our crocheting, and instead of, it's kind of the converse, if we get much more relaxed, we start using more yarn in every stitch. So that means that we use more yarn, it kind of starts eating up our yarn faster, and it doesn't go as far. So again, we need to find the next spot, do a little detective work, and be like, okay, here's the last spot. We definitely can find where, okay, purple to purple, we know it's right here. You want to pull back to where you get to that spot, Again, same thing, kind of take a moment, relax, figure out, okay, we need to start over from that spot and keep going. So it's good every once in a while, maybe once a row, once every other row, really look, stop for a moment and double check that you are on track and look for those diagonal lines.